Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us as we now have the 4th of July in the rear view mirror, which means we are firmly now right in the heart of summertime. A lot of summertime activities going on. A lot of people looking forward to the fall already. I can't quite make myself do that just yet. Boy, we had some heat, some miserable heat. I'm hoping, there's no secret here. We time shift the show here a little bit, so I recorded a couple of days before you hear it, sometimes a few days. But I'm hoping by the time you hear the broadcast version of this radio show, it has cooled down a little bit. It was absolutely miserable. I mean, whether I was on the water or mowing the lawn, I thought I was going to melt into just a pile of water, sweat, and moisture. It's the one thing I don't like about summertime, when it gets real hot, real muggy, real humid. And then this year, of course, we got the smoke to deal with as well. I was out on Saginaw Bay fishing my beloved Skinny Water. I was probably only about a mile offshore, and you could barely see shore. So that's kind of an interesting situation. It kind of reminded me of fishing the fog over on Lake Michigan. Back when I used to fish kings on Lake Michigan, we used to get fog quite a bit. Now, we don't see fog hardly ever on Saginaw Bay, so it was an interesting situation and kind of reminded me of the old days of fishing over on Lake Michigan, something I haven't done in a long time now. Used to fish kings over there with my dad, and now that he's gone, it just, I don't know. He would want me to continue fishing salmon there, but walleye are right in my backyard so close, I just can't ignore them. Speaking of weather, and now weather forecasts, Mother Nature and the weather forecasters threw me an interesting curve my last trip on the water. It had called for light thunderstorms early, and then light southeast winds, like single-digit southeast winds, which would be, no problem at all where I'm at. So indeed, the storms did come through. I got out to the boat early because I had a crew coming with me that day, a very good crew, a family from church, the Burke family from church, my church, Trinity Monitor Lutheran Church, and our new pastor, Seth Kaiser, was coming along with us as well. So I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. So I got out to the boat like way early, like an hour before they were supposed to get there, got everything tied on, everything cleaned up, everything good to go, everything ready to rock. And as I'm sitting there waiting for my crew, this storm came rumbling through, which is not unexpected. They showed up, and it was still raining and thundering a little bit, no lightning. And I said, hey, if you want, why don't you go ahead and maybe go get breakfast and come back in an hour after this all blows through? And they said, oh, no. We've been wet before, and it's supposed to blow through. Let's go fishing right now. I said, yeah, okay. If you're willing, I'm willing. And again, it was supposed to be, and as we were leaving the channel, the storms had indeed blown through, and it started to look like it was going to get really nice. And there in the river, it was almost dead calm. I get out of the river mouth, about a quarter mile out of the river mouth, and it starts to blow. And I'm like, this is not what it was supposed to do. And it is blowing out of the southeast, but it's starting to blow harder than I had expected. Okay, no big deal. Just keep an eye on it. The Angler Quest can take it, that's for sure. I can take it. My crew can take it, except we did have one little girl with us, so I was keeping an eye on her, but her dad was keeping a close eye on her as well, so I wasn't worried about that. So we get out, we set up lines, right away, boom, real nice fish. I mean, real close to shore. Everybody else is running by me, or they normally would be running by me out to deep water, and I'm fishing my beloved little shallow water. And as we're setting lines, I mean, it's really starting to rip. And this was not forecast at all. And within about 10 minutes, it was blowing, I bet you, 35 miles an hour. And it was really ripping. It was really rough. And I thought, oh, boy, if it's this rough where we are, we're in protected water, what would it be like if I was, 3 miles offshore right now? So because I had a good crew and they knew what they were doing, I could concentrate on driving the boat because Otto, the autopilot, was having a hard time. It was blowing so hard, the autopilot was really having a hard time with it. So we got a couple of more fish in some really, really rough water. And then, boom, it switched from a southeast to a northwest. And normally when the wind switches like that, it dies. It'll go southeast, calm, northwest. It didn't. It went from a from a southeast to a northwest in about 2 minutes or less. So I've got waves coming every direction. There's no pattern to them. You can't troll comfortably in them because you can't troll downhill. You can't find a trough. You can't find anything. It's all over the place. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, boy, this could be a short day on the water, a quick trip. But again, the forecast, well, not the forecast, because at this point I'd given up on the forecast. But the radar, we can see, okay, it's clear behind us. So I fished that shallow water that I call skinny water. We got, 3 or 4 fish in there, but it was obvious it wasn't going to be one of those days when I was on fire. So I had been out earlier in the week to get a backup spot just for a day like that. When my skinny water goes dead, I wanted to have a backup spot. And we had been out in 17, 18, 19 feet of water, running spoons the previous trip on lead core and got a quick 2-man limit there. So okay. Obviously I had those waypoints in. We ran out there and I could not find fish. I mean, I didn't even set lines because I couldn't mark fish. So I talked to a buddy of mine, a fellow captain of mine, and I said, hey, are you still over in that one area we were fishing before? And he said, yeah, I am. He said, but I am really shallow. I am really skinny. Like 4 to 6 feet of water. I'm like, really? Got nothing to lose. So I made the run over into 4 feet of water. At one point, I found myself at 3.5 feet of water. Now, with a tri-tune and an outboard, that's not a concern. I wouldn't want to be in there with a boat with an outdrive or twin screws. I'd be nervous as could be. But man, did we get the fish. We took a 5-person, 40-man limit of nice walleye. We probably caught 55 fish, kept 40 of them. Wow. I love fishing skinny water. To me, skinny water is like, people always ask me this. In fact, this might be the subject, the topic of this week's Ask Avery segment. People say, what's this skinny water you're always talking about? It's just shallow water. And for me, it's like 10 feet or less. 8 feet, 10 feet, but 4 feet of water? Man, it was a riot. We were running flicker minnows just a few feet behind the boards, so close that you didn't have to take the offshore board off the line to net the fish. What a riot that was. Now, by the time you hear this show and by the time I make my next trip, those fish will probably have moved. But it sure was nice to find them in there, at least on that one day, especially with such a good crew. So what else is going on? You might be getting ready for the fall hunting seasons. I've got kind of a hunting season going on in my house right now. Have you ever had voles in your yard? Not moles, but voles. V-O-L-E-S. Man, those things are destructive. And just all of a sudden, we are overrun with these things. So I've got traps out there. It's like, I feel like I'm actually a trapper now. It would take an awful lot of voles to make any kind of a hat. And I don't think their hide is worth very much at all. Have you got a problem with those things? A mouse trap with peanut butter seems to be the best thing we've found so far. Put it in their runways, kind of like deer hunting, right? In deer hunting, you set up over a runway. Well, these voles have runways, and they're pretty easy to see. Well, you pull the grass aside, you put that mouse trap in there with a little bit of peanut butter on there, and whack. And it's kind of rewarding, I got to be honest with you. Have you been shooting your bow yet? probably about time to get started, especially if you're a traditional archer. You shoot all year long, don't you? If you're shooting a compound, yeah, it's time to start thinking about it. Even us crossbow shooters, like my bow's going back up to Jay's, just to have them check it out. These new high-tech crossbows today are so sophisticated, and there's so much energy stored in these things that they recommend that you have them looked at by professionals every so often, every given number of shots. But I shot mine a lot this spring, getting ready for turkey season and bear season. And I think I'm just going to take it back up to Jay's. Have them take a look at it, go over it, make sure I'm good to go for this upcoming fall season. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots. Much of the state finally got some rain. Is it enough? Are we still in drought conditions? I'm sure some people in the state still are. Rich will talk with us about food plots, what we should be doing right now, or is it a hiatus? You know, do you take July off? Do you take August off and then start in the fall again? I don't know. Rich will tell us that. Then Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters, a good friend of mine. We're going to do a Mike Avery Outdoors, Outdoor Magazine radio hunt down there this fall. I want to talk with him about that and maybe how you might want to take a little out-of-state adventure. You know, I love hunting in Michigan, but it's fun to get outside once in a while. In our second hour, Bernie Berzynski from the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. The National Convention is coming up in Escanaba in just a few weeks. We'll talk about that. Nick Green of MUCC checks in this week's Ask Avery segment. And at hour number 3, we're talking fishing with Ali Shakoor. That's all coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Tawas on WIOS 1480 AM 106.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. You know I always carry a Rapid River knife in my pocket. You want proof? Here it is. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife opening up. I carry that thing all the time. I think I reach for it several times a day, every day. And it's nice to know that I'm carrying a piece of gear that was made by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula and carries a lifetime guarantee. That knife ever breaks or something goes wrong with it, they'll fix it. In fact, they will even sharpen the blade on that thing for the life of the knife. I would encourage you to check out the Rapid River showroom on US 2, just east of Rapid River. Or if you can't make it there, go to the website rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. I have a lot of people asking me, hey, with, we heard about there was some changes coming up for the upcoming fall deer hunting season. Is one of those changes going to be that we're going to be able to bait for whitetails in the Lower Peninsula? Nope. Don't look for that to happen. Not anytime soon. I will guarantee you will not see the bait ban lifted for whitetails in the Lower Peninsula anytime in the near future or foreseeable future. So what a lot of people are doing, they're going to food plots. And man, if you have the ability to do that, a food plot is a wonderful option. Food plots are a big deal here now in Michigan. They're a big business too. And I think Michigan-based Killer Food Plots is one of the best companies out there. Rich Chrzan is the guy behind the company these days, and he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Rich, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Mike. And yourself?
Hey, I'm doing just great. Boy, we got some nice rain. Much of the state did. Are we still considered in a drought, or is that danger past us now, at least from a food plot perspective?
Oh, it's Michigan. I don't think we ever get out of that danger. We may not get rain now for another 30 days. Hopefully that's not the case. It's kind of a bummer. It has to happen on the holiday weekend, right? But everyone's been begging for it, so let's just accept it and see what it does. It's been so dry. Feel like I'm just planting dust right now.
So you are still planting. I know June was a real big month for you. Do you plant right into July then too, Rich?
So I will, yeah. I like to slow down in July, the middle of July, because it's usually the hottest part of the year, right? Except for this year, it seems like we got that July weather in June.
Yeah.
So, So yeah, I will. Right now, I'm doing a lot of gun blind installs. I'm a 360 gun blind dealer, so I like to take that time when it's hot. I mean, it's not that enjoyable installing gun blinds, but that's what we do. And then the last couple of weeks of July and August, that's another run and gun kind of time frame. So I'm looking forward to it.
So if somebody doesn't have a food plot in at this point, is it your advice now, wait a few weeks till we get into August?
Yeah, I would. I like to start prepping the food plots in the last couple of weeks of July. You know, if you've got to kill off what's there, the existing vegetation. Carnage brassicas and white rage are a great fall food plot. You put those in, and it's got the purple top turnips, and then it's got your radishes. They just sugar beets. They just love that stuff in the fall, right? And it matures in about 35 to 45 days. So the window, the last week of July, second week of August, that time frame, them 3 weeks is a great time to establish those fall food plots. Gives the deer the food they need later on in the season. It's very attractive. If you just bow hunt, it's a great product for that because it just brings the deer in during that pre-rut and that post-rut when they're trying to build their body back up. So great product, great time to do it. Hopefully we get some rain. I've been putting a lot of retain in the ground this spring. Thankfully I have. That has helped out a few times. That's our moisture nutrient absorbing pellet. Lasts in the soil up to 3 years. It's potassium based, so once it runs its life cycle, it actually provides more nutrients for the soil, and you can just re-up it. So that has helped me out quite a bit in a couple of food plots I've installed this year. So that was a blessing in disguise, I guess.
Well, that retain, to me, tell me more about that, because what I know about it seems almost too good to be true, to be honest with you.
So if you follow me on Facebook, I just posted a picture, and it's like I say, potassium based pellet. It's really small. It almost looks like kosher salt when it's in its original state. And then when it rains, you put it in the soil, so you mix it in like you do your fertilizer, you turn it in, and then when it rains, this small pellet swells up to about the size of a marble. And it's just taking in all the nutrients and all the water it possibly can, and it stores it. It's like a savings, your bank savings at your bank. It just sits there, and then when we get this dry weather like we had, it slowly leaches the nutrients and that water back out, and it's at the root base of the plant. So it's going directly back to the roots of the plant. It's giving it what it needs in that dry time, so your plants can still flourish and produce the tonnage you're looking for come fall.
Is that then just for sandy soil? You wouldn't put that in a real dark topsoil, or certainly not clay. It's just for sand, isn't it?
No, it's not. It is great for sand, and it is great for clay, because what it does when it swells up, it breaks that compaction up in that clay. And then when it leaches back out and it becomes that small pellet, now you've got air pockets in your soil, which allows the oxygen to the root base. So it is super great for clay, just for the compaction part. Sand, it's great because it holds the nutrients at the root base instead of it filtering right down and being 6 to 8 inches below where your roots are trying to feed. And then, we've actually used it in a heavy dark soil that was holding too much moisture. And that actually helped that out because it pulled that moisture in and held it in the ground, allowed the ground to dry up a little bit so it wasn't standing water. So there's there's a lot of uses for it. You can use it in almost any soil you want. It does last in the soil for 3 years, but what we've been doing is we just do like half rate almost every year. So that way you got some of that product in the ground that's at 100% capacity. Because, everything does degrade a little bit. Like I say, its life cycle's over in 3 years. So we try to just up it every year. It's made a big difference. We pulled plants out of the ground, and the roots are wrapped right around those gels. It's amazing. So,
yeah, the roots are hanging on for dear life, literally.
Yeah, right now they are for sure. So, it's been pretty hard to battle the weeds this spring just because it's been so dry and hot this early. So, there's a lot of people that are going to end up redoing food plots to do fall ones because they got overwhelmed with weeds. But we're working on it. People can make it. If they've got any questions or concerns, reach out to us at www.killerfoodplots.com, and we'll do whatever we can to help you guys combat the dry spell we're having. So,
and you may have answered this earlier, but I'm going to re-ask the question. Then, if you wait and put a food plot in August, are you putting different seeds in the ground than you would in June, or can you plant the same thing?
You can plant the same thing. All our products can be planted spring, summer, fall. It just really depends. So, our brassicas and our white rages, the sugar beets, if you put those in the spring, you'll produce the big, you can get them up there to grapefruit, to volleyball size in the ground. And it's really impressive to see that. But the deer actually like those that kind of vegetation and those bulbs at a smaller state because they like to be able to pick them up in single bite. They'll pull them out of the ground and they'll eat them that way too. So what we like to do is if you're going to do clovers and you say you want a clover field, this is a perfect time of year, right in the August time frame, to plant clover and then go with the brassicas over that clover. So that clover will establish while the brassicas are being browsed on. So then come spring, you still got a food source for them because now your clover's popping out of the ground and they got your spring food source. And you can go back through and throw brassicas in that in the fall again, too. So,
do we still have time to get a screen up, like a border patrol? Do we have time to get that high enough so it's effective for the fall hunting season?
No, unfortunately, the border patrol and our smoke screen, you can get it in the third week of June and still produce probably a 6 to almost 8 foot tall wall. I like to try and get those in the first couple of weeks of June, but it's really been a struggle because of the dryness.
Yeah,
a lot of my border patrol, even at my house, it just didn't produce because we didn't get no rain, and it really wanted that rain. So, not now. Don't do the border right now. It's too late in the season for that. So you could start looking at doing like a switchgrass and planting that in the fall. A lot of people do that too, and that way it's coming up into the spring for you.
Boy, if it wasn't hard enough to have a small family-owned business, you guys also have to deal with the added hassle and challenges of being at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Yes. And unfortunately, a lot of people they're very understanding with that. If you ever look at our quote, we got disclaimers for all that stuff, right? Because Mother Nature doesn't just weather it, animals and deer, raccoons, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things to combat, but Mother Nature is probably one of the biggest ones, and she has not been very friendly.
She has been a mean something. I can't even say it here on the radio. Yeah, she's been interesting. I also find it interesting, though, too, that you're expanding a little bit and you're installing gun blinds. Which brand do you carry?
So we carry the 360 gun blind. I actually made out of Pennsylvania. They're a great product, a great blind. I do a lot of, it's like sitting in a bay window, actually. When you sit in these blinds, there's windows all the way around you, so there's no blind spots. I'm a tree guy, right? I like to sit in a tree because it's wide open. You get to see everything. There's no restrictions except trees. And I feel that way when I'm sitting in one of these 360 blinds. They're just super impressive. So they're built really well. I've got one customer. He's got like 6 of them right now, and he says he won't do anything else. So,
well, if folks want to learn more about these 360 blinds or killer food plots, go to the website killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. Rich, you and I will talk again in a few weeks as the summer continues to progress, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Mike. I enjoy this time.
All right, that sounds good. Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based Killer Food Plots. Again, the website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. You cannot fight Mother Nature. I should have included that in my list last week when I said things I've learned in 65 years of life. You can't fight Mother Nature. Maybe I'll make an addendum to that, because you can't. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we're going to talk with Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters. Any music there, Matt? Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters coming up after the break here on Outdoor Magazine. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM, 1380 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. You know I love that. Linwood Beach, I can't say enough about the people, the facilities, the location, right there on the shore of Saginaw Bay, on the west side of Saginaw Bay. Head out of the channel and you're into the fish. Great facilities, full-service marine shop, ship store, campground, boat launch. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. And what I'm doing right now, this time of year, is fishing. But I do find myself thinking a little bit toward the fall. You know, back when I had the TV show, one of the coolest things was it gave me the opportunity to meet so many interesting people. Now, I talk with interesting people here on the radio show all the time. But sometimes it's just over the phone. We don't get a chance to meet in person for a long time. Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters is one of the guys I met over the years that I think the world of. He owns Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters in Ohio. Their website is ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. And a couple of years ago, Bill said, hey, why don't you, Mike Avery, get some of your friends and listeners together and come on down and do a bow hunt with us. And we did, and it was wonderful. And we've done that a couple of years now, and we're going to go back again this fall. But I got thinking, if you are looking for a little out-of-state adventure for a whitetail hunt, Ohio is the perfect place. You can buy a tag over the counter, and it's a close drive no matter where you are here in Michigan. So I pulled Bill out of the woods, where he's doing all kinds of stuff right now, including setting up tree stands. I said, Bill, can you be somewhere where you got a cell signal? And he said, sure I can. And guess what? He's here with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Bill, welcome back. How you doing?
Good morning, big fella. How are you?
I'm doing good, but man, you and Neil, you've been working hard, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's just that time of year. It's all maintenance, and we picked up some new farms, so it's always fun setting up new farms. We got them set up, and we're almost ready to rock and roll.
What's involved when you get access to a new property, a new farm? What is that like, Bill?
We just first, we look at the topo maps like everybody should do, and then we break the farms down into 10 to 20 acre plots, and then we go through those 10 to 20 acres, and we pick our spots where we want to put our tree stands.
To me, that's an art form, a science. Where do you put a stand? What do you look at, Bill?
Mostly terrain features, little pinch points. Just if you break a property down into smaller acreage, and then just concentrate on that small acreage for a little bit of time, you'll see things that you didn't see before. Just down trees, broken fence lines, just little small stuff that these deer are going to use to manipulate that ground to get around on.
How do you keep track of all this? I mean, is this all in your brain? Is this all in your mind? Do you have a master map with all this laid out somewhere?
We do use maps. I can remember all my tree stands, but I can't remember a birthday or anniversary. I don't understand it. I just don't understand it.
I get that.
It out yet. I haven't figured it out yet. We've got about 155 to 160 stands set right now. Wow. And I could tell you the colors of the tapes, where they're at, why they're there, and then, like I said, I can't remember my birthday or an anniversary or anything else.
I do know, though, from hunting with you several times, if you've got a food plot that you like, you will put multiple stands around that food plot so you can hunt that in a variety of conditions, wind directions.
Yeah, and I tell the guys, listen, when you get here if you're here for the first time, the guys that have been coming for years, I tell the guys, listen, when the sun comes up, if you go in the mornings, it's going to look like LAX with all the different color tapes. There's usually one primary stand and then 4 to 6 stands within 150 to 200 yards of that stand, just so we can move without bumping deer around and, access in and out.
How many years have you been doing this now, Bill?
This will be 26 years this year. I can't believe it.
You started when you were just 12 years old.
Yeah.
And you are in one of the whitetail hot spots of the country. You're like in a deer mecca right there.
It's what a great time to be in this state, especially these two counties that we hunted. Licking is number one in the state for Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett, and I believe it's in top 6 in the nation, which is unbelievable. And then Knox County, which is no slouch, is in the top 3 of the state. So we're in 2 pretty good counties. We're right in the corner where Licking, Knox, Muskingum, and Coshocton all come together, which are the big 4 in the state.
So you got a lot of attention for good reason. That's got to make it harder, though. I mean, when you go to these farmers and say, hey, I want to lease your property, you got to get people coming in from the outside. There must be outside outfitters coming in. I mean, from a business perspective, you got your hands full.
Yeah, it's a juggling act. I mean, it's the landowners know what they have now. I mean, it's Ohio. It's no longer a secret.
Mm-hmm.
The farmers know what they have, and the outside. There's just so many out-of-staters influxing to the state. But I tell the out-of-staters that come here, if you're here hunting, these locals, they know when you're not here. And, you know how that goes.
And you're always there, so you got a handle on that.
I wish I had a handle on it. I mean, it's tough. It's a full-time job. I mean, this is all we do, and it can be nerve-wracking, but it's very rewarding.
We're talking with Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters, ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I'll talk with more about his operation. We do not have an opening for our hunt in October, but Bill does still have openings. If you want to hunt with him in Ohio this fall, we will tell you how after the break. Again, Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters, ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. More after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM, WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Sheboygan, almost said Chicago, Sheboygan on Big Country Gold. There's a lot of difference between Chicago and Sheboygan, and I'll take Sheboygan. WCBY 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry for 3/4 of a century. They continue to lead today, to innovate, come up with new products, new manufacturing processes for target archers, traditional archers, compound archers, and crossbow hunters as well. In fact, when I am in the woods with my crossbow, I have Boning products on my rig, and I would encourage you to do the same. Check them out online at boning.com, BOHNING. We're talking now with Bill Pyles of Ohio Bowhunting Outfitters, ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. And Bill, you were one of the early operations to embrace crossbow hunters, huh?
Yeah. I mean, we've been, the state's been legal, I think, now for over 40 years. It used to be in the primitive weapons, but now it's, and it lets a percentage of the bow hunters that couldn't get in the woods before get in the timber, and that's, it's a great thing.
Why concentrate on bow hunters? I mean, your success rate would probably be higher if you just ran gun hunters.
Well, the gun season is only 7 days.
Oh, that's not going to work then, is it?
Yeah, the gun season is only 7 days, and it can be frustrating, and it can be a challenge with the amount of people that's in the woods for those 7 days. And I've always been a bow hunter. I was raised to bow hunt. My dad was a bow hunter. My grandfather was a bow hunter. So it just came natural.
So what can somebody expect if we come down and hunt with you? What are we getting?
We're a fully guided operation, which means we take care of all the details. Anything you could possibly think of, we take care of it. Of course, we don't sit with you in the timber. We get the hunters to from. Everything's marked. The farms are groomed. They're well taken care of. And we're a very aggressive operation, so we move around a lot.
Again, fully guided, though. I don't want to give people the wrong impression. You stated this, but I want to state it again. Nobody is sitting in a stand over your shoulder saying, "There's your deer, there's your buck." This is not a high fence operation. These are wild animals.
Yes, this is 100% fair chase. Your meals, your lodging, everything is included in the price of the hunt. And then, like I said, we take care of all the details. All you have to do is hunt. That is it.
Can you, well, I know you can't. You can't guarantee that a shooter buck is going to walk in front of one of your clients.
No, sir. I wish I could, but I wish this operation was 100%. That would be something, but it's just not on the cards. It's just not realistic. And, these guys are watching these videos with 4 or 5 160s walking around together. That just does not happen.
So what do we see? What is a realistic expectation? Will we see a shooter buck? And I'll talk about that in a minute. Is there a good chance we'll see one in 5 days of hunting?
In 5 days of hunting, yes, sir. I mean, it's just, it's our job to get, we provide opportunities. I don't provide guarantees. I provide opportunities. That 130 to 160 range is our typical encounters. We've killed a bunch of 170s, 180s, 190s. We have not broke 200 inches yet. 198's our biggest. We've been close, but we always have 1 or 2 every year on cameras. But those are pretty special deer.
So I hate the term shooter buck, but in this case we have to use it because you have some minimums. What is your minimum? How big does a buck have to be before your clients can let an arrow fly?
Yes, we are 125 minimum. We did that for to harvest a 125. We did that for management purposes through QDMA. If you start whacking these 100-inch deer, pretty soon a farm is going to be wiped out. And I hate to say it, the first couple of years we were in operation, it was about killing deer. And then I realized really quick that this is not going to be sustainable. So, we went to a 125 minimum. We do have a few farms that are 140 minimum, and that's not because they're any better. It's because that's what the landowners want. And a 140 is a realistic expectation here in Ohio.
You get a Michigan guy coming down or a Pennsylvania guy coming over. that 125 may be the biggest deer he's ever seen.
Patience. If you're here at the right time of year, there's going to be a lot. I mean, we have a ton of deer, and you've been here several times. We have a ton of deer. If you're patient, and if you can pass up that first, 120-inch, 130-inch 8-point or 10-point, you're probably going to be rewarded with at least an opportunity.
Yeah. Tree stands or ground blinds or both, Bill?
They're mixed, and actually about 80% of our stands now are ladder stands. They're just safer. They're easier for the guys that we're, as a hunting group, we're getting older. I mean, there's not a whole lot of young people coming into the hunting sport for some reason. I can't explain it, but, we're getting older, and the guys are, even me, when I set those first couple stands a year, I'm a little shaky.
Yeah.
So it's ladder stands. The hang-ons are big hang-ons, big seats, big platforms, footrests, and then the ground blinds are usually elevated 5 to 10 feet.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of everything.
So you've got a few openings. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, go to the website OhioBowhuntingOutfitters.com, OhioBowhuntingOutfitters.com. Tell Bill you heard about him on the Avery show, and maybe he'll take special care of you. OhioBowhuntingOutfitters.com. Bill, always a pleasure. We'll see you in October, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Bill Pyles again, OhioBowhuntingOutfitters.com. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, change gears. Talk about trapping. I know it's not the time of year to talk about trapping, but the National Convention of Trappers will be in Escanaba in just a few weeks. We'll talk about that and more coming up in Hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to Hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I know you don't care, but I do, so I'm going to continue to make this point every week. Outdoor Magazine Radio is a syndicated 3-hour radio show heard on broadcast stations across the great state of Michigan. That is how it is recorded, produced, syndicated, uploaded, distributed, and to be honest with you, sold as a radio show. And I make that distinction because when you look across the state and even across the country, there aren't many syndicated, statewide, outdoor-based radio shows in existence. And I think if you can, the best way to listen to this show is on your local AM or FM station, because if for nothing more, they get the content of the show before the podcast is uploaded. But isn't it nice to know that there is indeed a podcast version of the radio show, and that podcast joins thousands and thousands of other outdoor-based podcasts that are out there, and a lot of them very, very good. You can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page. It's on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player FM, Deezer, Odyssey, and even on YouTube. So, if you can't hear the broadcast version, it's nice that the podcast is there. And I don't want to talk badly about podcasting because I love podcasting. And each month I produce podcasts for some of my advertising partners. Angler Quest Boats, Primal Outdoors, Polar Craft Boats. And when we're done here in the studio recording this week's radio show, we will do this month's offshore tackle podcast. So keep an ear out for that as well. Regardless, though, of how you are hearing my voice, when you are hearing my voice, the broadcast version, the podcast version, I do certainly appreciate it. I've been doing this a long time, and I wouldn't be able to continue this without your support, and it means a lot to me. I am committed to this outdoor lifestyle here in Michigan, to promoting it, encouraging it, talking about it, and it goes back to my upbringing as a kid in West Michigan. I was brought up in the outdoors, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. Not trapping so much. My dad was a trapper. I never picked it up, but my dad was a trapper. And I remember gangs of muskrat traps hanging out in the shed. And I remember him boiling those traps. And I remember him, that whole mystical science art form. And I have so much respect for trappers. And you might say, well, this is kind of a weird time of year to be talking about trappers, right? We're not trapping right now. Well, there's a big event, a national event coming up here in the UP in a few weeks, and we want to talk about that with Bernie Berzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Bernie, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Mike. How you been?
I've been doing just great. Summertime good? You been doing any fun things?
Well, getting a little bit of pan fishing in. Doing well there. Then that's about it. Summer's here.
So, summer is indeed here. And you got a big event, Bernie, coming up here in a few weeks. Tell me more about that.
We've got, we got a couple of events going on here in Michigan, but we got, the big dance is the NTA convention. And that's going to be up in Escanaba on July 27th, 28th, and 29th. Got a lot of good things going on there. That's kind of like... I can't say all the pro trappers are there, but, most of the big name trappers are going to be there. And if anybody is interested, that is the place to be. And it is in the UP and, it is in our state. That's the cool part about it. And they'll answer a lot of questions and there's a lot of demos going on there. And, it's a good place to go and how you want to say, meet the guys that kind of really have a good handle on what's going on and ask them questions and equipment and, and it's in Escanaba. I mean, it's a beautiful place to be. So
the Riviera of the North must be at the UP Fairgrounds there, eh, Bernie?
Yes, it is at the UP Fairgrounds.
You talk about these guys who are professional trappers. I'm stammering here because I don't think of anybody as being a professional trapper. I think most of you guys is doing this as kind of a hardcore hobby. What is a professional trapper? Do they have TV shows based around this? Are they full-time predator control or critter control? What is this, Bernie?
I guess I would call them, I would call them that professional guys because they're very good at what they do. Okay. And yes, some of them do have, some podcasts that are live, and some of them are selling equipment and make lures, and some of them make traps. So I kind of put them in that professional class. And when you speak to them, they answer you back in a professional manner. So I call them professionals.
Gotcha. One thing I've noticed, though. I'm sorry, Bernie, but one thing I've noticed about the trapping community in general, at least the people I know, the people I've talked to, is you guys and gals are very interested in furthering your sport. You want to put your sport in a positive light. You want people to come into your sport, and you're very, very good about teaching newbies the skills, or at least the basics, on how to get started. Yes.
We try, to keep the heritage going, keep the sport going. And it stems off from a lot of things too. And there, you can also, through trapping, do predator control. And teaching though, and I will say this, we got some good things coming on that have been just growing with leaps and bounds. The women, we have now a lot of women that are getting really involved in trapping, and now they have their own aspect to it, okay, from a woman's point of view, and it's called the she side. And so, a lot of times, men will bring their wives and kids to the conventions, and what do the women do? Well, now they have women that are trapping, and I got to say, these ladies are very good at what they do, and they're very understanding. It's the ladies' side of it. They can explain it the way the women do it. So, you're getting a lot of girls that are getting a lot of girls and women are now kind of getting involved in that sport, and kids also too. We try to really get the kids involved in it because eventually, they are going to be our future in hunting and fishing and everything in the outdoor world. So. And if we can mentor a kid or ask him questions and, answer questions, and in general, we'll get kids that have a good interest in it. But, as they grow older, as like me and you, Mike, what came in there? Well, there was cars, there was girls, there was school, there was jobs.
Yep.
So they fade away. But then when they finally kind of settle down and get to where they want to be in life, they go, oh, yeah, I remember liking trapping, or I remember hunting, or I like fishing, and they pick it back up again. So it might not be immediate, but yes. And, we do have some things up there in Escanaba. It's called the Kids Cave. And so what that does, it kind of it's a thing for kids to interact with trappers, and we teach them, at their level on how to trap and do things for them and some activities and stuff. So we try to get the youth involved. But we also have I'm throwing this in right now. We have a convention too for the Michigan Trapper Predator Callers, and that will be after the big July NTA convention, and that will be down in Everett, Michigan. That'll be at the fairgrounds, and that'll be in August 18th and 19th. And that's always a good time, too. And at that convention, we're having the world champion possum toss contest. It's a fun thing. It's not a real possum. We're not harming animals or that, but it's a sandbag with a tail. And I'll tell you what, it gets very, very competitive with these guys and kids and girls too. So it's a fun thing. If anybody's out there in that area and they want to stop in, come on in and see us. We'll help you guys answer a bunch of questions.
Well, and in just your answer to my question here in the last couple of minutes, you've brought up several key points that I want to follow up on, Bernie. But listen, I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. Can you stick around for a few more minutes so we can talk more?
Sure could, Mike.
Excellent. I appreciate that. We're talking with Bernie Berzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. Their website is mtpca.com, and that stands for Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association, mtpca.com. Coming up here in just a few weeks, they're going to be in Escanaba for the national convention. Then they've got the state convention downstate after that. But I'll get Bernie, and he's listening, and I think we've got his mic off here, so he's not going to answer yet. But 3 things he brought up this idea of exposing kids to the outdoors. Yes, we may not be looking for an immediate response, but if we plant that seed, and it's a cliche, but if we plant that seed, they may well come back around. Women in the outdoors, we've seen this in several different areas. Fishing, hunting, now trapping. Women bring an interesting perspective, and they don't bring the baggage of being a man and being so macho. And then this whole concept of, he said the possum toss, it's not cruel. Trapping is not the cruel endeavor that the antis make it out to be. So I want to follow up with Bernie on those three topics and more after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine as we talk with Bernie Berzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why would you buy a bunch of different sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and snap on and zip on an outer shell with a different pattern? So you can use it for multiple purposes with just the price of one good quality set. The website is versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Also, if you're looking for big sizes, like 4 or 5X, VersaSkins can help you out there as well. Again, the website, versaskins.com. Just think of this. Just change your skin for the season you're in, and that will remind you VersaSkins and versaskins.com. While you are online, I would encourage you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Then jump over to this website, MTPCA.com. That stands for Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association, MTPCA.com. We're talking with Ken Bernie Berzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. And Ken, it was just, I guess it's been a few years now that the Trappers opened your organization up to the Predator Callers. Was that an attempt to just have a bigger tent, more strength in numbers type thing?
It was kind of in the beginning, looking at that, strength is in numbers. What we've kind of done in the last, within a year, we've really got these guys involved. And I'll tell you what, it's unbelievable what we're receiving as far as information and as far as, and I've got to kind of say the Predator guys kind of did not have a home. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we gave them a home, and these guys are great. They're a bunch of down to earth guys with a lot of good information, and actually we're gaining an awful lot of members with those guys. As we're going, we've got a couple guys that we have as directors in there right now. And they're doing a bang-up job, getting these guys together, which is good.
Yeah, I was glad to see that. I think there was it worked out to be a good move for sure. You mentioned before the break the fun activity of a possum toss or a possum throw, and you mentioned and you brought up cruelty, and you said, "Look, it's not a real possum." I can't talk about trapping with a guy as knowledgeable as you, Bernie, without talking about this misconception and misperception primarily put out there by the antis that say what you guys are doing is cruel and inhumane. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I think nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, I've kind of mentioned it before, some of your podcasts. And is it cruel? Is it inhumane? I've got to say, and I will say, maybe for a minute, versus if you can get out there and control some of the animals that have really gone outside their bounds, and I'll mention raccoons. And at this time of the year, coming all the way up to the time in the season, raccoons catch a variety of diseases. Distemper is one. And distemper can be spread. There's two different types of distemper. There's canine and there's feline. And a raccoon can carry both of them. And so as he is caught with this disease, and as he moves around in his woods and woodlot or whatever it is, and he affects all his buddies, and they all catch it, and then you start losing raccoons. And it not only affects that, it affects mink, it affects fisher, pine marten. It can come into your cats and dogs. So, and I've got to look at it as a controlling agent. As trappers get in there and we control some of the animals, we cannot take every animal out in there. But you know what? Versus, let's say, an animal that is held in a trap for several hours versus watching one take 40-some days to pass away with a disease, I ask which is more cruel. I would rather dispatch quick and fast, save those pockets of animals, maybe control some disease that is going to hopefully not blossom, which it does. It ebbs and tides. But if you don't put a control on it, it just continues to go and it just rolls over, and as far even into that scary one as rabies. I don't know if we've had any outbreaks of rabies in Michigan lately, but boy, we sure do not want that. So, the cruelness of it, it's there for a minute. And I think every trapper has a heart for that reason, to help manage the wildlife the best that we can. And I think by trapping, we can do that. We really can. We can get in there. Here's another thing, Mike, that just is now taking off. Is beaver. We now have so many beaver right now that flooding is a great concern. It's not helping any of our trout streams by pushing warm water in there. Losing a lot of, how you want to say, predation towards woodlots, flooding, crop damage. So by actually controlling the beaver, that's where we're at right now. There's a lot of guys out there now that are doing nuisance control on beaver.
Well, beaver is an excellent example. I think they're a fascinating animal, and we didn't have a lot of them when I was a kid growing up. Now, as you say, they're all over the place. They cause all kinds of problems, and who's going to take them out? It's going to be you guys and gals. It's going to be the trappers.
Mm-hmm. For example, let's just say if you are a trapper and you are working for the county and you're out there doing a beaver control job because he's plugging up culverts, okay? If you didn't have the trapper in there, you would have to bring in 3 men, probably 4 pieces of equipment, open the culvert up, only to get it plugged back up again, or have the road blow out, and then you'd have the road commission in there, and then it's call the trapper.
Call the trapper.
That's your best bet. Call the trapper.
I want to go back just a step here, though, too. I don't want to overlook this. Having a critter get caught in a trap doesn't necessarily mean they're going to die, because there are live traps, and even the foothold traps are designed these days, if you get the wrong species or whatever, to let them go, right?
Yes, release. Even most of your leg hold traps at this day and age, if you're trapping, and I have released an awful lot, in fox in particular, I have released a lot of fox undamaged, just because of the design of the trap. It will hold the fox, it will hold the coyote, it'll hold the bobcat. I won't go into the trap designs because there are many of them, but yes, you can release them. To go on again if you're not looking at that targeted animal. And mostly what we're also trying to do, too, is trying to teach people how not to catch cats and dogs. And, is it inevitable? Yes, it is going to happen. But then if it is a pet, you can release it unharmed, mostly. I can't say every time, but a good percentage of the time you can be able to release them undamaged.
So why let the fox go? Was it out of season? It just wasn't a target animal? Why would you not take that fur bearer?
Well, in my area, in my area, we did not have a lot of fox. We actually had predation of coyotes coming in, and the coyotes actually knocked the fox back so far. We just weren't seeing them. So if I would catch a fox in my area, I'm going like, wow, haven't seen you guys for a while. Live on and prosper.
Gotcha.
Go for it.
Yep.
But, on the other side of that, too, is I'm releasing a predator that is also going to possibly do, damage to maybe get into somebody's chicken coop or everything else. But so there is a balance in there. So, was it right to do that? Maybe not. But if the numbers are down, let them build up a little bit. It's not going to hurt it.
So is all, or at least is all of the trapping that goes on this time of year, is it all nuisance control jobs?
Yes, pretty much. Beaver damage control. Raccoons now, I'm getting a ton of calls for raccoons because, the little guys are out and they're moving. But my biggest call that I'm kind of getting is I'm seeing a raccoon in the middle of the day out in the field. Well, he may be sick. He might not be sick. He might just be wandering around looking for a place to go. Or he might be diseased. You never know. I can't make every call. But that's just, that's kind of what it is. Yeah, generally most trapping at this time, groundhogs. Groundhogs right now is a big thing for farmers.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. I think we'll always have groundhogs.
If you get a coon in a trap this time of year, can you tell right away if he's sick just by looking at him? Is it obvious?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes and no. Some of them you can't, but you really can't. State law is you can't relocate. Okay. So if you're called on a job for a nuisance animal, that animal has to be put down. You can't relocate him because, then if he is diseased and he has no indication of it at this point in time, you're just releasing him for him to spread his disease elsewhere. So you're better off putting it down. Little guys, even so, you've got a sow coon and especially the attic. I call them the attic ramblers. You get a raccoon up in your attic and got 4 or 5 little ones. The best thing to do that is to put them all down.
Sure.
There will be more to follow. There are a lot of raccoons out there now.
Bernie, it's always a pleasure. All right, listen, I always enjoy our conversations because, number one, I am fascinated by trapping. I have much respect for trappers, the history and tradition. I mean, Michigan was explored generations and generations ago by trappers. So it goes way back into the history of our state. It goes back into my family's history, and I appreciate you sharing this. I would encourage people to go to the website, mtpca.com, to learn more about the 2 events coming up. Bernie, have fun, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Mike. We'll see you.
All right, sounds good. Always a pleasure. Ken Bernie Berzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. Again, mtpca.com. The big national convention coming up here in a few weeks in Escanaba at the UP Fairgrounds. Then they're coming downstate to the west side of the state for the state convention as well. mtpca.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll check in with Nick Green of MUCC to see what he's up to. And then we'll wrap up the hour with this week's Ask Avery segment. And it's a topic I touched on earlier in the show, but it's worth following up on. Skinny water. And more coming up here on Outdoor Magazine. The Outdoor Magazine Show in Holland on WHTC, 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. You can hear us in Ludington, just up the coastline, WLDN, 98.7. And you can hear us in Manistee on WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots. We had Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots on in the first hour with some great information, great reminders. You're kind of on hold right now with your food plots, probably until August or so. Let's hope Mother Nature cooperates. You can learn more on the website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. I want to turn our attention now to the good folks at MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Clubs. I talk about these guys all the time. It is a group that I support. I think they're doing a great job. Nick Green is their Chief Information Officer, and he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, appreciate your time. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Trying to survive the holiday week we've all had here, but other than that, looking forward to the rest of Michigan's summer.
Anything from a work perspective? You're kind of on hold through these dog days of summer, aren't you? Are there things going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, the things that are always continuing are your Natural Resources Commission meetings. Those are each month. There was quite a contentious meeting last month when they passed a lot of deer regulations that did not include APRs or other such things that were offered. But now we're kind of, the legislature has just passed its budget last week, and it sent it to the governor's desk. So, really the highlights from that are kind of our commitment to the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. This is keeping invasive carp out of the Great Lakes. It's something I know we continue to beat the drum on, and it's been over a decade, but, if they get in, it's over in terms of our fisheries. So it's something we're very committed to, and we want to see that through to the end. Notably missing from that budget is cormorant control money. This is something we've been pretty forthcoming with legislators and the governor's office that we would like to see cormorant control money in. We have that ability, again, as a state to help our fish and especially help our stocking efforts by working towards cormorant control. So it's something we're hoping to continue to work with legislators in the governor's office. But you hit the nail on the head with the rest of summer. It's pretty slow. Legislators are back in office, really working on our priorities come fall, which will be commercial fishing, commercial guiding, which we've had introduced, getting some kind of sideboards on the commercial guiding industry. Nothing too not too much regulation, but enough that at least we're protecting folks who are hiring these folks. And looking towards fall, really, in those two pieces of big legislation and continuing to work through the Natural Resources Commission.
Just to clarify, you or I or anybody as an individual cannot go out and declare war on cormorants ourselves. But there is a process by which the state is now allowed by the feds to do that, right?
Absolutely. So cormorants are a migratory bird. With that, become a ton of federal regulations. So we can't just go remove cormorants from in Michigan's waters. But the state now has the ability, and there was a couple-year period there where they didn't, and there were some permitting things that needed to be worked out. But the state now has the ability to do that again. Has that the feds have said yes, fill out the request. We'll allow you to do this. And right now, what we need is an appropriation from our legislature and our governor's office to get that done. So it's something we're going to continue to work towards for supplementals, which are budgets, changes to the budgets that get enacted through the session, kind of like an amendment or, things like that of that nature. So as we work towards those supplementals, we'll continue to try to get that in because that's important. Anyone that's seen cormorants know the devastation they can have, especially in local areas. Where we're stocking these fish, where we're, in inland lakes that have walleye efforts underway to restabilize the population. I mean, we know where these problem cormorants are, and we could address it with money.
And I hesitate to bring it up, but consent decree, latest there?
The consent decree, we're still kind of in a holding pattern, waiting for a judge to lay out kind of what the final order will be. We expect perhaps another day in court here shortly. But if that does not happen, we will at least have some news one way or another, kind of what's going to be handed down, regardless of what happens on the CPMR, Coalition to Protect Michigan Resources and state end. The Sault Ste. Marie tribe has been pretty open and adamant that they don't feel there should be any decree handed down to them. They should be able to fish all of the treaty waters. So litigation is expected probably beyond whatever's handed down from the judge.
I got to tell you, Nick, you and Amy and everybody at MUCC and this whole situation, your level of patience, it amazes me because looking at this from the outside, I'm like, okay, let's I'm like, boom, 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 come on, let's make something happen. And you guys, you've been very methodical, very thorough, and I appreciate that, but it's got to be frustrating.
It is, and the consent decree is something that often, we've seen changes in the DNR director leadership. We've even seen changes in the fisheries chief since this has all been going on. So we're working with different folks. And it's frankly a department that we have to work with in all other aspects of our organization. So, we're mindful and careful when we pick and choose our battles. And the consent decree is one we've committed to trying to protect the rights of the sport fishing interest. And the state sees it a little bit differently on this one.
All right, Nick, appreciate your time. Nick Green of MUCC, MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this second hour with this week's Ask Avery segment. And it's a question I talked a little bit about in the first hour, but we'll follow up as we wrap up hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including the Twister 92.1 WTWS in Houghton Lake. You can hear us over in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And just a reminder, the way that the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. If there's something you've been wondering about, something that you really want to know or just curious about, and you want me to answer it directly, or if you would like me to pass it along to somebody else that I might have access to, maybe somebody in MUCC or DNR that maybe you'd like to get to, but you can't, and possibly I can. The best way to get these questions to me is to send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Sometimes people send them to me on social media messaging platforms, and that's okay. But I got to be honest, the best way to get them to me is just to send me a good old-fashioned email, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That is what Bob Carpenter did. He sent me an email that said, Mike, I hear you talking about skinny water. He said, I think I know what skinny water is, but can you help me out? What is skinny water? How do you fish it? Why do you go in there? And he said, and by the way, if you wouldn't mind giving me coordinates to your favorite skinny water honey hole, I'll take those too. Well, Bob, I can't blame you for trying. Skinny water, and this is just a term that me and some buddies came up with. And we probably didn't come up with it. Skinny water is shallow water. Shallow water, skinny water, is a completely subjective term. If you're a Lake Michigan salmon fisherman, 50 feet of water might be skinny water. 20 feet might be skinny water. I can go a whole summer on Saginaw Bay and never fish deeper than 30 feet. To me, skinny water is basically anything 10 feet or shallower. I like fishing skinny water because it's simple, it's easy, and most times when the fish are in skinny water, you know it. Because they're in there because they're aggressive and they're in there to feed. And if you make a pass or two through the skinny water, you're going to know right away if there's fish in there. I like fishing skinny water because, I left my skinny water the other day just to come up with a backup spot. And went out deeper, like 18, 19, 20 feet of water, which I realize is not deep for many of you, but for me it is. Ended up getting a quick 2-man limit of walleye on spoons and lead core, running 2 colors of lead, 3 colors of lead. 2 colors isn't bad, but 3 colors starts to, it's not as clean. It's not as easy. I like skinny water because you can run crankbaits. In my case, usually number 7 flicker shad, sometimes number 7 flicker minnows, or a good old-fashioned Hottentot. Yes, I did say Hottentot. They used to catch fish, and they still do. I can run multiple lines with the baits close to the boards. When I'm in 10 feet of water, I'll set them up 20, 30, 40, 50 15, 25, 35, 45 on the other side. With the crankbaits, 2.5 miles an hour. I like lately. For some reason this summer, they've seemed to have wanted it a little bit slower. In the low twos, 2.1, 2.2. But I've caught them at 3 miles an hour. Lance Valentine will go through there and, rip them through there at 4 miles an hour and catch fish. But the other day, I did get a tip from a buddy about some super skinny water. And we actually ended up in 4 to 6 feet of water and caught a 5-person 40 fish limit in 4 to 6 feet of water. I was as skinny as 3.5 feet of water. Now, yes, you do have to worry about weeds this time of year. That's a pain. That's a hassle. So you got to be willing to work. But it's not as big a deal to be changing baits and checking baits when you're running them that tight to your boards as opposed to being out there running 3 colors of lead. So that's what skinny water is. Skinny water is shallow water. Why do I like it? Because it's easy. You know if there's fish in there right away, and it can be very, very productive. And when it's not, you just head out a little deeper. Or you look for other skinny water, right? Color is important in there. You don't want crystal clear water in 10 feet of water. You're not going to catch fish in 10 feet of crystal clear water. You want some color in it. Sometimes the more the better. So thank you, Bob Carpenter, for sending that email to me, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Thank you to the good folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. And if you want to send me a question for the Ask Avery segment, feel free to do so. Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to continue on a fishing theme with Ali Shakoor. Ali is a fisheries biologist and a hardcore tournament angler. He also has his captain's license, and he looks at fishing from a very, very interesting perspective. I do not know if we're going to be able to check in with my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. If we can, we certainly will, because it just wouldn't seem right not to do that. Glad you're with us on this edition of the show. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and as I said earlier, my email address, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Hour 3 coming up.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. As you are hearing this show, the 4th of July holiday weekend is behind us. We have nothing but summertime weather, summertime activities coming up for a while now before we start to get ready for the fall. And isn't it a great time of year? But as I said last week, don't let the summertime slip by. This is, for many people, the best time of the year. This is the time of year when it gets to be late February, early March. This is what you're thinking about. So don't let those summertime plans that you have in your head pass you by. And it's easy because you're tied up with work. You're tied up with grandkids. You're tied up with kids. You're tied up with all kinds of things. But make those memories now while you have a chance. And we live in a great state to do it. Honestly, I'm in love with this state. I've spent my life here. I've spent my career here, and I've been blessed to travel a lot of very cool places and do some very cool things. But I am so glad that I live here in Michigan. because there's so much to do. And this time of year, as I told you here at the end of the second second hour, I'm fishing. I'm chasing walleye on Saginaw Bay. I look at fishing from a certain perspective. And I know my perspective is not, it's not very scientific, and it's not very detail-oriented. I catch my fair share of fish, but I'm not that good at it. I think I catch fish just because I've been doing it so long. I've been an observer and a participant and an angler on Saginaw Bay since they brought the resource back, the walleye back. So I'm going to absorb something. But I am very, very envious of the people who are detail-oriented, who have the education of a biologist. I'm thinking of Ali Shakoor right now. This guy, he's a tournament angler. He's a charter captain. He's a lifelong fisherman. He is a fisheries biologist. Think of the perspective that gives him. And that's why he's a guy that I love to talk with here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. And he's with us once again. Ali, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks again for having me. And I got to tell you, just sitting here listening to you, you got me fired up, man, talking about getting out and making, summertime memories. And thank you for that. I kind of get lost in a few things that I'm doing and kind of forget, and it's tied into my love of the state of Michigan, been here my entire life. And, man, you got me ready to get out and get on the water and get after it with that one.
I don't think you need much of an excuse or a reason to get out there, do you, Ali?
Not much of an excuse, but, like you said, you get busy. I have two daughters. One's in college, one's in high school, and they have things going on and family and all these things. And those things are important. But, it's something I learned from my dad that, fishing is cheaper than a therapist. So, sometimes you got to pull away and make that time to get out there and enjoy. And like you said, make those memories, because it's going to come to a point where those memories of certain things and certain people will be all that you have.
You grew up in an outdoor family, right? I know from talking with you before, your dad taught you to hunt. He taught you how to fish. He instilled this love in your being.
Oh, are you kidding? Yeah, it was from day. My earliest memories are sitting in a 12-foot Sears and a rowboat with a 6.5 horse Johnson, some lakes around Jackson, and that's how I grew up, and that's where the love of the outdoors comes from.
Did you ever dream, Ali, as you were a kid growing up, that you would end up where you are today, what you're doing today, the position you found yourself in?
Never in a million years. We talk about it. My father and I, we'd sit there and our, Bassmasters was on TV, and we'd always say, man, we're pretty good fishermen. We can hang out with those guys maybe, but, to grow up and to get in a tournament fishing and have some success and qualify for some things and everything, it's just, thinking back to where I come from and how I was raised and everything, it's an awesome experience, and I'm just so humbled by it all.
And following you online like I do, I know you did have some success very recently, eh?
Yeah, we've had a couple of decent tournaments. We've had 2 top 10s in a row in the Masters Walleye Circuit. One out of Lorain, Ohio, one out of Monroe. We were right there. We're just a couple pounds from winning. I'm not going to talk about lost fish, but we always, because that's part of the game. But we put ourselves in a position to win both of those. So we were recently qualified for the World Walleye Championships next year, which will be out of Alpena, Michigan. Another fantastic sport that Harley mentioned. So, so we've had some success during this tournament season this year.
When you say you put yourself in a position to potentially win these, does that mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that you took some chances and you took a risk on looking for big fish, or what do you mean by that, Ali?
We're pretty calculated a lot of times in our plans. We put in a week pre-fishing, sometimes a little bit more, to get an idea of what fish may be doing or where they be moving or how they're reacting to different conditions. But, putting yourself in a position is just, we'll make those gambles. Hey, we can go here and pick up a couple of big fish. We'll grind out 5 and go big fish hunting. So, our plans have worked for us. But sometimes the best laid plans go awry. So you really, like you mentioned before, you have to be detail oriented so that you can kind of have a playbook to kind of go back to every once in a while.
And I feel like I'm convinced that your background as a fisheries biologist gives you a tremendous advantage.
I wouldn't say it's a tremendous advantage. And something you said earlier about not having the scientific background. But you do, right? I think a lot of people, when you talk to them, they have the background, they have the knowledge. They may not know specifically where it came from, but experience is the greatest of teachers. You may not understand the principle that's underlying what you're saying, but you still understand what's going on. You know, kind of start to see some patterns and everything. So it does help me maybe with planning and making things a little bit reproducible under stressful situations. But overall, you know, I think it helps everyone out.
You said you grew up with your dad, you know, watching Bassmasters and talking about bass fishing. How did you make the jump over into the walleye world?
Again, with my dad, so we did grow up bass fishing and chasing bluegill. He was a big bluegill fanatic. You know, that's my base. And then we kind of progressed, and he started going of all places, Saginaw Bay. So Saginaw Bay is where I cut my teeth, walleye fishing. And we just kind of progressed. We started walleye fishing, started jigging and trying some different things. Back then, Lindy rigging was big, and, you know, with in-fishermen and what they were doing. And there was this kind of this progression. And I was a college athlete, and I missed the rush. I missed the starting gun going off in the race and the competition, and started looking around, and I thought, tournament fishing might be a go. George Miller up in Flint talked me into fishing my first one, and that's where it started for me with tournament fishing. You
were a track guy, Ali?
Yes, I was a track guy. Yep.
And that's what your daughters are doing now too, right?
Yeah. My daughter's at the University of Dayton, doing well. She was all conference this past year. More importantly, you know, she made the dean's list. My youngest daughter also, she's running track in Dearborn here, and, you know, 4.1, 4.2 GP out of 4. So, you know, they're very well rounded, but they are doing track as well.
And see, you're keeping this going. I honestly got goosebumps right now. What your dad did for you, you're now doing for your girls. And this is part of this whole outdoor lifestyle that we love, that we embrace, and it's incumbent on us to pass this down, because for the first time in my life, Ali, and I'm getting off track here, but I know I can do this with you. For the first time in my life, I feel like there are more people who don't participate in hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping than do, at least down in the southern part of the state, and that concerns me. So we got to do our part.
It does. It concerns me as well, because, like you said, it is a lifestyle. I don't go fishing, you know, a couple times a year. I don't go into the woods. It's part of my makeup. You know, there's times where, you know, I'll bear in the house, you know, and my wife will be like, you know, you need to go fishing. You know, you need, because she understands it's a part of who I am. It's a part of what makes me. And you know, participation is low, you know, and I try to do my part. There's a great organization out of Detroit called We're Fixing the Fish. She has 5 or 6 events a year at different places on the Detroit River, and we recently had one on Belle Isle, had a bunch of kids out, gave them rods and reels, and, you know, there's a lot of those types of efforts around, and those types of efforts are really important to help protect this very important heritage that we're a part of.
I couldn't agree more. We're talking with Ali Shakoor, a fisheries biologist, tournament fisherman, dad, just good all-around guy. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show, but Ali's website, if you want to learn more about him, is alishakoorfishing.com. Ali is A-L-I, Shakoor, S-H-A-K-O-O-R, alishakoorfishing.com. You can also find him on social media. He's very active on social media. I love the fact that Ali is an educator, he's a participant, he's a promoter. He gets it. He loves this whole thing, and I really enjoy talking with him. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with Ali. I did get in touch, by the way. Dixie Dave called me. It looks like we're going to be able to talk with him as well. So I'm really excited about that. alishakoorfishing.com, alishakoorfishing.com. My website, by the way, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you have a question for me, a comment, a concern, a criticism, or if you have a question for the Ask Avery segment, our last Ask Avery segment was talking about skinny water, send it to me, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. Continue our conversation with fisheries biologist and tournament angler Ali Shakoor right here on Outdoor Magazine. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM 95.3 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, on WCHT 600 AM 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a very cool and unique way to show off your trophies. Use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, check out the website, nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. Talking now with a very, very interesting guy, Ali Shakoor. His website, alishakoorfishing.com. That's alishakoorfishing.com. Ali, this time of year, are you involved in your research projects? Do you follow a school calendar? Are you actually working on stuff this time of year for, well, I know, for example, you were working on algae blooms on Lake Erie. What's the status of that?
So yeah, I'm still going. We got some funding for another year, so we'll be out. I'll be out with the folks from NOAA on the boats starting this month. So we'll be using a multi-beam sonar unit. It has really big transducers. It's like an airplane. You fly it under the water, 400, 210, 110, 70 kilohertz. So we're going to be mapping subsurface concentrations of microcystis, which is the primary mat-forming cyanobacteria in the Great Lakes, in Lake Erie. And then along with that, we're going to be mapping fish communities, both inside and outside of the bloom, to see how fish communities are relating to the bloom at varying concentrations. So that's going to be the main thing. I'm also right now looking for frog eggs, if anyone's seeing any green frogs specifically. So I need the eggs. I'm going to be doing some lab work with microplastics and in conjunction with microcystis, again, some of the harmful algal bloom work. So, yeah, so I have a couple of different things going on right now.
A stupid question, basic question. What's causing that bloom? Is it agricultural runoff?
Oh, boy. Yeah, there's a combination of a lot. You have some, municipal runoff sometimes, sewage that gets dumped in, which is fuel. Agricultural runoff, can be is a big part of it. You have the Maumee River watershed on Lake St. Clair. You have the Thames, which flows through a pretty good agricultural area. Both have pretty decent sediment loads. So yes, you get some nitrogen, some phosphorus, the fertilizer that gets dumped in. There's also some reactions that take place in the lake that help feed those too. But the primary driver in Western Basin Lake Erie is springtime rainfall. That's kind of the predictor of how severe a bloom is going to be most years. So it's a multifaceted problem. There's a lot of things that goes into it. It can be pretty complex.
And why is it a concern?
First of all, you remember back to 2000, I believe it was 14, almost 500,000 people in southeast and lower Michigan and northern Ohio lost their water supply. That water's drawn from Little Cedar Point, the intake there. And when you get a northeast wind, that stuff will start to build up below the surface and it's brought into the intake. So there's some human health impacts, but more importantly, there's some ecological impacts also. It can affect fish communities. It can affect fish health, bird health. So there's again, it on several different fronts. It can affect people and the resources that we like to enjoy.
And you bring up microplastics. I only know this from our previous conversation earlier. That has far-reaching implications as well, right?
Extremely. Microplastics are everywhere now. They're found in the Great Lakes. By microplastics, we mean, they're very small fragments, 5 microns, 1, 2, very small. It's been beaten down. But they can kind of, they'll have chemicals, hormone disruptors. I was reading a paper the other day. It's not fisheries related, but for the first time, microplastics were found in the uterine wall of a pregnant woman. So they're everywhere. And they have impacts on health and disease and everything. And then there's one of my lab mates, Dr. Kishore, he's shown there's a pretty interesting interaction between microplastics and algae, cyanobacteria from the harmful algal blooms. So there's this interaction at play, which I'm going to be investigating a little bit with the green frog experiment. So, yeah.
And the microplastics, are there, I mean, Mother Nature, wave action, sand, rocks, they eventually beat down the plastic that people throw in the water? Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But you also have, some of the microbead technology that you see in like exfoliating soaps, kind of the rough, scrubby soaps. Makeup has a lot of microplastics. So there are a lot of products that contain microplastic. They just don't always start as a large 2-liter, pop bottle, and it gets broken down over time. So, yeah, a lot of different sources, but eventually a lot of it's going to end up in not just the Great Lakes, but in the oceans and eventually in some of the inland lakes also.
Ali, when I look at our Great Lakes from a fishing perspective, I see just this huge, wonderful success story. Salmon fishing's pretty good. Lake Erie's crazy. Saginaw Bay is great. But from a biological, from a scientific perspective, what do you see? What is the health of our Great Lakes right now?
I think the Great Lakes are in pretty good shape. Are there some threats? Yeah, harmful algal blooms, invasive species. You talk about invasive carp and some other species that are kind of knocking at the door. But overall, when you look at the Great Lakes, Lake Erie, compared to the 60s and 70s, just 60 years ago, it has been an amazing success story of recovery. A lot of different agencies have had to do with that. The public has had a good deal to do with that. But I see something that I wish more people would utilize and take advantage of. One of the greatest resources in the world, and I think they're in great shape overall.
I had the opportunity to fish with our new DNR Fisheries Chief, Randy Claremont, and we were talking about Saginaw Bay walleye population and how it's just booming and how vibrant and viable it is. And then I said, well, how does that compare to Lake Erie, Randy? He said, you guys on Saginaw Bay have like 10% of the fish the guys on Lake Erie have. That body of water, that fishery is just incredible.
The fish factory. It is absolutely insane, the amount of fish in the system right now, the size of the fish, the average size of the fish. The larger fish are starting to come back now. We had a couple of years with that 03-year class that kind of petered out. That was really driving the trophy fishery. The overall size is coming back. It's incredible. We're blessed here. We talked about this before, how you can kind of go out and do a lot of things, quote unquote, wrong, and go out and catch a 4 or 5 man limit and have a good time doing it. It's an extremely good fishery, and we're extremely blessed to be on it.
All right, so let's kind of bring this conversation full circle. Let's bring it back to fishing again. You get these big open water fisheries, Saginaw Bay, Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair. How do you break that down? I mean, you got a lot of water there. Where do you start? How do you know where to find fish?
A couple things. I try not to think about large bodies of water like, people say that Great Lakes or Lake Erie, Saginaw Bay are just kind of large, featureless bowls. There's no structure. I try to think about structure differently. Salmon guys, they're really good at this. Current is structure, temperature breaks, structure. Wind-driven currents, wind wave action is structure. Shadow from harmful algal bloom, from weed. There's a lot of structure out there that people don't traditionally think of as being structure. And walleye are, they're predators. They need those changes, those edges to ambush their prey. So I kind of look for, intersections, temperature breaks, water clarity changes, bottom composition changes. So that's kind of where I start my search when I'm looking at kind of bodies of water that are considered, large, featureless type bodies of water.
Are you more of a trolling guy than a jig or live bait or finesse type fisherman? How do you describe yourself, Ali?
Boy, I can't label myself right now. When I first started, of course, I was a troller. I started jigging the river, Saginaw, but I branched out. I was considered a troller. But over the past, 4 or 5 years, I've kind of shifted where a lot of the tournaments that I'm fishing now is a casting thing. But I'm not proud. I'll do whatever it takes to get fish in the boat under those situations. So I try to do it all.
So when is your next tournament coming up?
I am headed to Akano, Wisconsin, the Bay of Green Bay. We're going to leave weekend after next. The tournament is the 21st and 22nd, so that should be a pretty interesting one. There'll be a lot of casting and jigging up in the clear waters of Door County for that.
Green Bay, that's a big fishery, isn't it?
Oh man, it's incredible, and there's nothing like those Door County fish. That deep golden hue can be tricky. You know, you can literally in some spots sight fish in 30 feet of water up there. So boat control and being able to do some other things, get your spread away from the boat are really important. But it's also a great lakes fishery.
You talk about sight fishing. I've always wondered this. If I can see a fish in crystal clear water, I don't care if it's 10 feet or 30 feet. Can't he see me too?
He can. You know, there's a little bit of play with how the way light refracts and everything, but there's a good chance. If you're close, if you're far away, you stand a better chance, and that's where kind of the casting, you know, polarized sunglasses come into play to kind of give you a little bit more distance away from that fish. But forward-facing sonar has kind of been the great equalizer in that regard. I can sight fish a fish out of his field of view. You know, still see how he's reacted and everything. So that's an incredible technology, you know, that people are using now.
Yeah, that brings up a whole nother conversation. Maybe I'll save that one for our mutual friend Lance Valentine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is very, you know, it's out there. People are wanting to ban it and different things and everything. But yeah, we wouldn't even go down that pathway. This conversation will get sidetracked for real.
But you guys right now, and the walleye trail, you can use that technology at this point, correct?
We can use it, and you pretty much have to. I've learned my lesson. On Green Bay, I was on a hump that was producing fish and left, and my buddy came in right after I did. He had it, I didn't at the time, and he got two good fish as we were leaving. He asked me, "Hey, don't start the motor." He could see them. And then shortly after that, my buddies Max Wilson, Isaac Lockage come in and sat on that same hump, and they won the tournament. I didn't catch a fish off of it. I was the only boat of the three that did not have that forward-facing sonar. So,
and the next time out, you probably did, didn't you?
Oh, I did. I did have it the next time out, and you know, I've been practicing with it ever since. It's fun, but there's also times that I'll turn it off. I want to go fishing.
There you go, Ali. Hey, listen, always a pleasure, my friend. I enjoy our conversations. Good luck in all your ventures and adventures, and we'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, man. Always a pleasure.
A pleasure is mine. Ali Shakoor, his website is alishakoorfishing.com. That's alishakoorfishing.com. You can also follow him, as I do, on social media as well. We'll take a break when we come back. A few more things I want to talk about, and then I find out from Matthew that we do have wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar is going to join us, so we can look forward to that as well. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up. I hope you can stick around for the last few minutes of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 broadcast radio stations, AM and FM, across the great state of Michigan, including WTCM in Traverse City, that's 580 AM, and heading downstate in Saginaw, WSGW 790 AM and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now for this 3 hours or so. It's called the Outdoor Magazine Studio, and I got a logo behind me to prove it. I'm in here with Matthew, who's helping me out, doing a great job, Matt. I do appreciate it. And we had some technical challenges earlier in the show that you won't even know about, but Matthew is a young guy. He held strong, and we worked our way through them, and I appreciate that very much. I think you got a long career in broadcasting ahead of you, buddy, so good job. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. I mean, listen, it's nice to go up north, right? It's nice to get away. It's nice to go on vacation or whatever, but isn't it nice to walk out the back door and look at your backyard or your patio and say, wow, this is someplace I really want to spend some time? Reader can take care of that. They can design a project. They can design a patio with everything from a pool to a fire pit to a built-in grill. They can design it. They can make it. They can maintain it. They can repair it if you ever have problems in the future. I mean, you know, look, if things, sooner or later, things are going to wear out or break or something, Reader can help you with that as well. I've had the reader folks in my house a couple of times lately. They did a minor landscape project. It was minor for them, would have been a big job for me. They came in and took out the mulch out of the beds, which I don't know why we put mulch in there in the first place. We should have just done stone. They took all the old mulch out. They laid down a weed barrier, and they put a very pretty river stone in there with some bigger rocks as well to give it some texture. And it looks very nice, very nice. And then I also had them come back because I thought I had a leak in a sprinkler system. Turns out that wasn't the case, but it was nice to know that those guys were there and could take care of it. The website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. So what else is going on? I find it interesting that Ali Shakoor from the previous couple segments also talked about this concept of not letting summertime pass you by. And it's easy to do. And this is how it is my job to talk about the outdoors and to do things outdoors, right? It's my job, honestly. And even I let life get in the way of that. You know, this summer, like my daughter Shelby's getting married at the end of the summer. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in preparation for that. So it's easy to get sidetracked. It's easy to get tied up, you know. Graduation parties are kind of slowing down now, but the family get-togethers, family reunions, graduation parties, work, that thing that pays the bill, work is always out there, right? It's easy to get bogged down and tied up and distracted by day-to-day stuff that in the long run isn't going to be as big a deal as these memories that we have the opportunity to make with our families and friends right now. Yeah, you could spend Saturday morning in the office catching up on work if you want to. Or you could head out on the water that same Saturday morning with your kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews or buddies or whatever. Try to catch a few bluegill, bass, walleye. What do you think you're going to remember in the long run? Do you think you're going to take pictures of people smiling in the office holding up their laptop? No. But you will take pictures of people out on the water with a big smile on their face. And that's the type of things that we'll remember. I see it in my own life. I see it in my own family. You know, you go through it used to be in the old days, you'd pick up your photo album, right, and flip through photos. Not now. You pick up your phone and you look through your photos. And I have 16,711 pictures on here right now. And the vast majority of them are family and hunting and fishing. And if we don't do it now, summer's going to be gone. I'm telling you right now, before we know it, it's going to be Labor Day. And then summer's over. Oh, time does fly. Life flies by. But take advantage of it. And I want to encourage you to take advantage of it by going outdoors, by heading outdoors, by going out on the water, by going out in the woods, you know, hunting, fishing, shooting, trapping, wildlife issues, conservation issues. That's what this show is about. Encouraging you to either get involved in this outdoor lifestyle or continue this outdoor lifestyle that for so many families in Michigan has been such a big part of who we are, especially in the northern part of the state. We don't see it as much in the southern part of the state. It's there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, people in the southern part of the state have strong outdoor ethics and lifestyle. But you get into the bigger cities, not so much, not as much. We got to keep it going. This show's also includes wild game cooking. Each week, we wrap it up with a segment on wild game cooking with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And we're going to do that once again, even though I changed the day that we recorded this week and threw Dave a curveball. He handled it well. He's behind home plate, and he saw that curve coming, and he grabbed it. So we'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. Hope you had a great 4th of July holiday. Hope the rest of your summer is wonderful as well. I was a little nervous here earlier because we changed the day that we recorded, and I thought, oh, I forgot to let Dixie Dave know. And I thought it just wouldn't seem right to do an Outdoor Magazine radio show and not wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. But guess what? My concern was for naught, because wild game chef Dixie Dave is here once again, and he's going to help us bring this baby home. Welcome back, buddy. How you doing?
Real good. Hey, if it's really, really noisy, there's sitting in out down at the end of our driveway with so we can get some reception. We don't get anything up by the cabin. And there's a mama crow feeding the babies right in back of me. Oh, my God, they're raising holy hell.
I can't hear it, but I appreciate, David. You know, you go out of your way to make this show happen. I mean, honestly, you and I both remember there was a time you were in the parking lot of a hospital having a heart attack, and you did this show. Your commitment and your dedication is impressive.
Either that or I'm just a dummy.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but that's not an option. So what do you got for us this week, Dave?
I didn't feel all that bad. I got pan-fried
the
frog
doctor
legs
said
this
you
year.
were.
Yeah, the wife said so. But anyway, we got pan-fried frog legs this time of the year.
Oh, yeah.
They're so easy to catch. You can take like a fly or any kind of anything that looks like a bug in the shallow water around the edge. You can take a long, skinny rod, and they'll fight each other to bite it. Or you can shoot them with a BB gun or whatever. But, man, they are tasty. You can actually do something as easy as flour, egg, breadcrumbs, and then fry them in some oil. That works good. But for something real upscale, pan-fried, you're going to need about 8 to 10 ounces. And this would probably be, say 10 to 12 ounces would be enough for 2 people. You need some flour to dredge, olive oil to saute, a small onion diced up fine, a 6-ounce package of sliced mushrooms. You could use either a can of diced tomatoes, drained most of the liquid off, or just chop up some fresh tomato, which we used to always do at the restaurant there. A couple tablespoons of fresh butter, a little bit of parsley chopped kind of coarse, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how much garlic you like, diced up fine cloves, juice of a lemon, and a splash of dry white wine. You can dredge the legs in flour and in a nice hot saute pan with a small amount of oil. Brown them off real good. And you can actually brown it in batches and set it on the side for a while and get them all on both sides. When you get it all done, if you don't have a pan big enough, I would suggest to do that system. So then you can add the garlic, the onions, the mushrooms, and bring it right up to a nice, real good boil. Drain the juice from the tomatoes or the fresh if you want. Add to the pan and the lemon and the white wine, some parsley, and the butter. And you can put the frog legs back in because you're going to be stirring this gently a little bit, so you could actually kind of stack them up a little if you wanted, if you don't have that big of a pan. And if the frog legs are really large for a big bullfrog, you can use both front and hind legs. And then you can cover this up after you get it really nicely boiling real good. Turn the heat down for 4 or 5 minutes. Let the steam through. Then you can uncover this and then reduce the heat down. Reduce it down real thick and creamy to a consistency so they're not watery, but they got a nice, gravy-like appearance. And then what would really go good with this is a ring of rice on everybody's plate because then it sucks up all that good juice.
You said 10 to 12.
Sell this like crazy at the restaurant.
When I was a kid, we used to spear frogs, and we'd cook up those frog legs. I mean, that was as much fun as going down to Cedar Creek trout fishing.
Yep. We did too. When I was growing up, we used to go to Fletcher's Pond all the time, as I said another time, and the frogs there were really big. They had great big bullfrogs. But leopard frogs are real good eating too. They're not as big, but And we used to spear them, too. I had about an 8-foot pole with a little frog gig on the end of it.
Yep. And actually, I was going to ask you, you said 10 to 12 ounces. How many frog legs would that be then, Dave?
Well, a big bullfrog, you're going to get probably 4 or 5 sets of legs. You know, you could actually take in where the ankle would be, take and push the other frog leg through that because it's just got a sinew holding it. And then they wouldn't be all splayed out, and they have a little more eye appeal, and you can stick more of them in a fry
So
pan.
10 to 12 ounces, like what, 3 or 4 big bullfrogs?
Easy, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. All right, David, always a pleasure. I appreciate you adjusting your schedule to accommodate my schedule, and we'll talk again next week.
Anything for you, Michael.
You know what? I know that, and I appreciate that. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. Always a pleasure to have Dave along with us, and it's a pleasure to have you with us as well. Don't forget to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. The email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Oh, always a pleasure. I love doing this. Not going to retire anytime soon. At least I don't think so. Always a pleasure. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com and MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Talk to you next week.